so that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
was major.
Hey,
Hey,
how are you,
Amanda.
Amanda?
Hey,
How are you?
good, how are you?
They hyped this storm like it was going to be something big, and it hasn't turned out to be anything today.
No. Even flying in, we flew in from Honolulu this morning, and but in San Francisco they stopped service and everything, so the sky's going to be terrible coming in. It was
Nothing.
nothing.
Good job you can be wrong at every time. Weather. You get paid really well.
Yeah.
Bryce? Good, how are you?
Hey, Bryce. Good.
Yeah.
And give him a few more minutes to arrive. I didn't hear anything from him. Blake or Sheldon.
That should all be live and going. I messed with it a little bit, probably, so just to make sure that the audio, the mics are working.
Pick it up.
Can you talk, Amanda?
Yeah. Hello? Is it picking it up? Hey Blake.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey Blake.
Hey.
Howdy.
pray, or are we waiting for
We're
Malcolm?
waiting for everybody that can't tell time.
I think we're all here.
So Sheldon said he popped on Zoom, so
He's,
I drove past our beautiful H.L. Parker Estates. So I'm late.
all right, we'll go ahead and start our work meeting for the Planning Commission for March 13th, 2025. As far as action items, I guess we'll just dive right into it. The first one, does anybody have any questions on the Hickman proposal? I assume staff has a presentation for that.
Yeah.
Make sure to give you time. From the packet, it looked like it was pretty straightforward to me. But
Yeah, there's nothing there, I don't think.
go ahead and bump down to the next one for Elena Winter. For the day, she, on her application, said home group. The one question I had is the home group is under 12, but in our application she put 12 to 25, so I don't know if that.
I got a comment on that just real quick. Hey Sheldon, can you hear me? Sheldon?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, let me put you on some different speakers. Can you speak one more time?
Can you hear me now?
So we should be going to the. Yeah, we can hear you.
That's better?
Kinda.
With that, I mentioned the same thing to her. She just said that there will be no more than 12 students in any given period. She was going to do two classes. Yeah, one morning, one afternoon, 12 total. You needed one, so there'd never be more than 12 at a time.
So Malcolm, on their application, she put not applicable as far as having state certification, and then she's checked on here. If she doesn't need to be licensed, provide exemption letter from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing and any medical and first aid training that she's had. There wasn't anything in our packet. Do you know if she's provided any of those things?
I think the only thing she provided to Morgan was a CPR certification. Does that sound right? I'll ask Morgan. I'll text her and let you know here in a minute. But I'm not aware of anything. Morgan has been working with her. I asked her, because I just reviewed it this morning, just to make, I asked her why she didn't need state certification, because I saw the same absence, and she said that because she isn't serving food or doing, there was a time frame that she thought she was exempt from any state licensing requirement.
Well, I think if she is exempt, she has to have an exemption letter from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing. So I looked up the stipulations, and you have to have 35 square feet per child, which that would be 384 square feet. Like in a preschool, on what she has on her map that she submitted, it's got 384 square feet, 32 by 12. So that would be a max of 10 children. And I know she's put on here 12 to 24, and I didn't know, because she put daycare, and I saw the same thing about the home group daycare, and the definition's not jiving. We don't have anything in our definitions in our code that says preschool, so I don't know if she's planning on doing, like, you know, maybe a couple hours here, a couple hours there, because there are some different distinctions on what the state licensing requires.
I think her hours are on her application, the last item maybe.
It says 9:30 to 4, but she could say, maybe I have a morning session coming, but I'm only going to have 6 kids in an afternoon. So those are some questions I'm going to ask
Is she
her.
trying to build a building too?
Well, I think one distinction, initially she wanted to use that shed, and we advised her that that wouldn't work. You have to have a restroom, I believe. I had Nate work with her, our building inspector.
Okay.
You have to have a restroom, and so we've made it fairly clear to her that, you know, she'll have to use her home. That's why it's included on that site map, but that she's, well, you know, I don't think we could prevent her from using those sheds for activities, or, you know what I mean, whatever. But I think ultimately the home has to be a part of the,
Equation.
yeah.
So as far as her licensing goes, is that in our bailiwick, or is that a state issued thing?
Well, on our application, we have to have, if she hasn't provided a copy of her state certification, then she has to provide an exemption letter from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing. We would have to have that before we can approve it. So that's why I just wondered if she turned it in staff, because we didn't have it in our packet. Like, there's certain things they can be exempted because of. If she doesn't provide care more than 2 days during the calendar week, but it sounds like from the application she said Monday through Friday. There's a list of things that would make her exempt, but I'm not sure. I don't know if she's wanting to do an actual preschool and it's just going to be a couple hours a day for so many kids, or if it actually is going to be a daycare, because like I said, our definition doesn't allow for, well, it doesn't have anything that specifies just for preschool. So she may have picked daycare because that fit most closely, but
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. You'll have to kind of work through that with her. And the only other piece from the city standpoint, and we definitely could have done more work on the state licensing potentially to help you guys there. That's something to take a note of. But like I said, when I asked her, she seemed to be fairly rehearsed in why she thought she had an exemption. But from the city standpoint, I know there will be a business license requirement, and that will include a home inspection. So that would be the city requirements.
So would the home total into the square footage of the building as part of?
I don't think the building could be her primary source for square footage. I think it'll have to be the home. I think if it's just the building, it's not, personally, I feel it's not on the table. I think that Nate did quite a bit of investigation for that, and it has to have a restroom.
so I printed this off from the state, and it does have to have so many bathrooms or toilets, depending on how many children and how many adults, like a mop sink. There's several things, and it just kind of depends on how many kids and the age of the kids. But there are definitely requirements that the state has, and so if that little building, that little 384 square foot building, doesn't have those things in there, I think she would have to include the house, but I don't know if that's what.
What'd we do last year?
Yeah, the building won't have any, for sure, and no plan to.
What was that like?
What'd we do last year for the gal that was gonna do the daycare? Remember that?
I do.
I think they converted their garage, is that the one?
I think so.
Yeah.
Saunders or something, wasn't it?
I think so.
Did they bring all that criteria
Yeah,
with that one? She had all her ducks in a row.
Other question I had is on the pickup and drop off area. Like, the road's not super wide down there, but it seems like there needs to be like
Gravel.
a good traffic pattern, either like a horseshoe or something that those people could pull into.
Yeah, I think right now it's a park, I think.
Yeah.
You don't need an own house.
I don't.
They have an old horse trailer that sits out front, on 4600, little white horse trailer, then there's a bunch of bark there.
I guess I don't pay attention. I'm not sure. Is it on the north or south?
It's on the south side. You know where Dale and Jan Wood is in mind?
On the corner? They live on the corner? Okay.
One up
Just
in
to
the-
the east of them.
To the east, okay.
So I don't know if that just seems from a traffic perspective that you're gonna have people coming and dropping off it logistic wise.
Yeah.
But I think that needs to be, see what her plan is there from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions we need to ask.
So I'm ignorant is there a difference between the home group and the daycare? Or are they two different things? Or
Well,
are they
they have,
synonymous?
They're two different things. If you look under definitions under 101A1, the daycare facility is an establishment or portion thereof where more than 12 individuals, children or adults, regularly receive care and supervision for a period less than 15 hours per day, unaccompanied by the individual's guardian. The daycare home, group home, is an establishment or portion thereof or dwelling where more than 6 but no more than 12 individuals, children or adults, regularly receive care and supervision for a period less than 15 hours per day, unaccompanied by the individual's guardian.
So it's just the number that is the distinguishing thing between
And the
both of
time,
them.
I guess.
They were both under 15 hours, right?
Yeah. 9:30 to 4 is.
Usually they have
ask
the
some of those
meetings so that we
questions.
can ask.
Did we have anybody speak up within 600 feet? Do you know?
Or they could come tonight.
I guess tonight, maybe?
So I had a question that kind of relates to that, like, from a ordinance standpoint, we're an administrative body and we just follow what the laws are. And specifically from that training from the state ombudsman office, he's like, we can listen to public comment, but we can't make decisions off that public comment.
Right.
We have to make decisions based off of what the
Laws, ordinance.
the ordinance, we're governed by the ordinances, so. I don't know, it seems like, well, we allow these people to come and voice their opinions, but when our decisions come down to it, it has to be based off of the ordinances. So it seems kind of like hey, you can come and complain to us, but we can hear your complaint, but we can't.
Well, but you're also approving a conditional use, and so you can put conditions on that use based on public, not outcry, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like a slippery slope, like you're gonna,
It is a little bit.
it feels that, to me, I guess that's what.
But it's just like this, if there's a lot of things that we don't know about, so we can put a condition, hey, we'd approve this, but you gotta have a little better
But that falls back like on our ordinance and what was required.
pick up and
from the
drop off
applicant.
area, and you gotta have, you know what I mean?
You have to take into consideration the safety, the health, and the well-being of the community. That's in our ordinances too. So when the public come, they may raise concerns that maybe we're not aware of because they live closer to it. And so it's kind of like when we talked about the drug and alcohol facility, there were a lot of concerns that were brought up that I think maybe we wouldn't have been aware of necessarily, that we have to take into consideration when we make a ruling on something, so that we can put those conditions in place. If it's an allowed use, we have to do some things that can mitigate some of those concerns that are brought up, and we do have that ability to do that, especially in the conditional use permits, where we're the ones that make the deciding.
It's hard for me to differentiate, like, I understand the drug and alcohol and the use cases. For me, it's just easier. It's a slippery slope. It just comes across as being like, well, I'm gonna grant it this time and I'm not gonna grant it this time. I'm not saying that in this scenario, I'm just saying broadly overall, it feels to me, it gets in an unbiased perception. Not saying that it is, but that's just for me personally.
But that also takes into, I think, account why we're on the planning commission, because we're not totally leaving it up to Malcolm and Nate to say, well, you've met every, you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, go for it. Because then that's just like an open gate, really, you know what I mean? Because we got another one right below this that takes advantage of every thing he can. So.
And I think it depends, sorry, go ahead,
go
Bryce. I was just gonna say, I think we also have to consider what capacity we're acting in, because most decisions, we are acting in an administrative role. But things like a request to open the general plan, that's where we have a little bit more leeway, because we look at it and we say, is this something that warrants opening the general plan based on the wishes that were expressed during the revision of the general plan? Is what they're bringing to us enough of a reason to open that and to go against what was already decided? And when the ombudsman office did the training, they talked a lot about that general plan that's your goal, that's your basically what is directing the future of the city. And so all of our ordinances and everything should support that. And they mentioned in that meeting, if you're going to change that, you need to make sure you're doing what the community wants to do, because they're the ones that help to guide that process. So it just depends on what role we're acting in.
It is a little slippery slope. I struggle with it every month.
So,
That one, the conditional use that came, I don't know, a couple months ago, and one of the neighbors had an issue with it, but it was more the health of her son, and
Yeah.
his time being at home, he had cancer or something like that, and so it was just working with the guy building the building to work his schedule around when they could do it. So
So it was a win-win.
it was a win-win for everybody. She didn't necessarily have an issue with the building, it was just the construction part of it, so.
Yeah, I do remember listening to that.
Morgan said that she did send a CPR certification. That was
But
all.
nothing from,
Nothing exempting her.
No exemption. And then we'll also want to kind of discuss if she has children of her own. That'll go into her number as well. Some of those items. So.
Any more questions or things like we need to address, at least the questions that we could ask her? I guess she would need to present that letter of exemption to get approved, so that seems like the biggest issue.
And she's crossed it off like she did, so I wonder.
Yeah, or I didn't know if that crossed off was like, hey, I submitted this, or I don't
has it.
need to,
I don't need to go
yeah,
with the chart, I only need
I
that.
didn't understand, so we can ask for clarification on that.
Okay.
On to the next one, Tyler Larkin.
Do you know the history behind this,
Yeah,
right?
I'd like to hear the history, because I have a
I
thought about
hear the
this
history,
one.
but there's one thing I think that I thought was important that Brandon mentioned last time to us when we were doing our work meeting, is that we're not necessarily deciding on the conditional use permit, we're just deciding on the bathroom,
Yeah, that
piece.
specific item.
that specific item, because that other piece has already been decided on. So that's just something that I thought was relevant that he brought up that I didn't consider.
Yeah, I would
before.
call this. It probably should have technically got on there's a CUP review. I think in the conditional use permit you guys gave last time, it said if anything changes, come in for a conditional use permit review. Well, this would be a proposed change or under review. Is the way I view it.
So
Yeah, the history.
he initially came in last year, and it's kind of a complex situation because he had built some greenhouses. He filed for an agricultural exemption, and on the contract that he signed, he stated that, well, the contract states a couple of things. I understand storing motorhomes, cars, or any kind of storage or use other than what would pertain to agricultural use is prohibited. I also understand that any use that does not comply with all of the provisions of this permit or the requirements of state or municipal laws is unlawful and may render my permit null and void. So this defines agricultural use means a use which relates to the tilling of soil and raising of crops or keeping or raising domestic animals. Not for human occupancy means use of a structure for purposes other than protection or comfort of human beings, but allows beings to enter the structure for maintenance and repair and for the care of livestock, crops, or equipment intended for agricultural use which are kept there. Greenhouses, he's written, not for retail. So when he came into the commission last year, we asked him if this was for business use or if it was for non-business, and he said it's for agricultural. And I've got an agricultural exemption, and we said, well, are you using it for business? And he said, well, yeah, if you grow crops and then you sell them, then you're still doing business and it's agricultural. Well, he said...
He was growing his shrubs and bushes.
He said, I'm just growing them. I have the minutes for, have all of this transcribed, but he said, we're growing, I have a landscaping business, we grow our own products solely for our business. There will not be any traffic, there won't be anybody coming here, and we asked him that multiple times. So, the problem is, this isn't an agricultural business, so I did some research. Larkin Meadows, this is the address for what he's applying for. Providing beautiful wholesale ornamental plants to northern Utah. We are a dedicated wholesale nursery located in Hooper, Utah, set to open in the spring of 2025. Our mission is simple, to provide stunning ornamental plants to wholesalers and landscape contractors. Have questions, we can help. Better yet, come see us in person. gives the address here in Hooper. Hours are by appointment only. The problem is that our code, this is located in a residential area, and by definition, this would be considered nursery wholesale. Any ground structures, greenhouses, or premises in which garden, farm, landscaping, or forest stock is propagated, grown, stored, or packed for commercial sale, and where the owner-operator sells the goods in large quantities to a limited number of buyers. Our code doesn't allow for this in residential area. It's allowed in agricultural, which we don't have, and it's allowed in commercial and industrial. The only thing that is allowed in a residential is a nursery retail, which they're obviously wholesaling. That's what they're saying on their company's page. And either way, if he did want to do a nursery retail in that area, he would have to have come in for a conditional use permit for that specific purpose. And that's not what was presented to us. So that's why I talked to the building inspector, I talked to Nate Tolman. That's why we're seeing this again, because what he signed up for and what he's presented is that this would be for an agricultural use. The fact that, that he wants to put a bathroom and an office in that building goes against what he signed up for in the first place. So we have to figure out what we're going to do to address that.
So if he would have done those items the first time, would we have approved your bathroom in the office?
Well, the thing is, it's not, we don't allow wholesale nurseries in that
Right.
zone. It's a commercial business what he's putting in there, and it's a
Right.
residential zone.
Yeah.
So it's not even allowed, like if he was doing a retail nursery, which was smaller and just, it's defined differently,
Sure.
he could have come in maybe and applied for something like that, and then
Yeah.
we would have had to decide because it's a conditional use.
Right.
But the way that it is now, I'm not sure how we're gonna.
And is agriculture defined by the number of acres or by the zone? Because
Well,
I couldn't find that in the code, because he has he owns both those properties adjacent that would qualify him for the agriculture zone, or the acreage.
the exemption, you
the
have to have
acreage
5
one.
acres
Yeah.
or more to qualify for that, but you also have to meet these other criteria, and that is where the problem is as far as I'm looking at it, so.
So like, you have to be in the agriculture zone, is that what you're saying?
Well, we don't have
Or-
an agricultural zone. There's an agricultural protection overlay you can get, but that's different from what.
We don't have any agricultural zones in Hooper.
So do we, I guess, interpreting what you're saying, we wouldn't, based off what you're saying, we wouldn't allow any wholesale nurseries
No.
in Hooper?
Well, not in a residential. They're allowed on our code, if you look at the allowed uses, they're allowed in commercial areas, they're allowed in industrial, and if we had an agricultural
Are they
area,
allowed in M1s?
industrial, yeah, they are.
So there's one right across kitty corner from that going south. There's a nursery there. They have to sign up. Are they licensed?
That's dead in the water. That's Alan Spalding, and it went under about 10 years ago.
There was stuff there last year. They had pallets of fertilizer and stuff they were selling. I seen it.
He shouldn't be, because the only thing he does now, it was 10, 15 years ago, it was Muskrat Springs Nursery, and it didn't make it. Now he sells pumpkins by the armful. You can go pick your own pumpkin, you pick.
And that would classify as agricultural, where these are ornamental plants, so that doesn't fall under the definition, like it talks about crops like fruits and vegetables, produce, animals, but not ornamental plants. So somebody could have, agricultural use is permitted in all areas, like if you look in our code, but this would not be considered an agricultural use based on what the definition
Just
is in
based
this
on
that he
the
signed.
plant type? So in other words, he can do pumpkins, but not flowers and trees?
If it's like a crop,
Yeah.
and
He might have been able, Alan might have been able to 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. So if
And he rents that shed,
Yeah.
and he's got all the hay in, he rents that out to a guy, so that's not even his equipment.
Right.
And I think it would have been okay if Alan did that, if he was doing produce, if he was doing crops, like actual agricultural.
Yeah, he was trying to sell tomato plants, and I know our ward bought geraniums from him for Mother's Day for 2 or 3 years, and then he just couldn't make it go. So he now works for Davis High School as their FFA director.
So on that, would
And
the
farms
tomato
on the
plant
side.
be considered produce, or is that lumped in as ornamental?
I think it's
I mean,
produce.
a crop, if you like,
I think it's produce, but
so, let's see.
Well, and while you're looking that up, if he would turn that into a nursery in that residential area, then he could do that, right? But because he's not identifying
A
it
retail
as a,
nursery.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, not a wholesale.
You know,
What I have
So
a
would
hard,
this be a review, I guess?
I have a hard time with, what if he didn't do anything and just what if he didn't come and say anything to anybody and just put the bathroom in?
He did that with the building.
Okay, and what happened?
Well, 2 or 3 people from the community came to the city and said, hey, what's going on over there?
Okay,
And then he got caught with his hands in the cookie jar and went, oh. So then he came and got a permit, but
I can't
Just like
confirm.
anybody
I believe he got a fine at one point from what
Yeah.
And
Morgan
it was
said.
something like $25 or $50, and that's the reason why we had our allowed uses and our fines and fees. This all started with this same application,
you know,
when he came in before.
so my question, I guess where I'm going with this is with the previous one we talked about, what if she didn't come in, she just started tending kids at her house? To me, it seemed like they're trying to comply,
right.
and instead of us trying to say, let's work with you to comply, we're looking for ways to say, we don't want you to comply. We don't want you to do any of this. We're going to make life difficult for you instead of saying, okay. I mean, I know one of those agriculture things that you read said, till the soil. Well, if he wants to be ticky-tacky, he's tilling soil. It might not be, but he's bringing soil in somewhere. I don't know. That seems to me like, are we trying to make their life more difficult? Or are we trying to
Help them.
it's their ground, it's their, I mean, it's, and if they don't do it, what kind of enforcement does the city have? So do we
We don't
drive
have
them
a
away
lot.
to say, don't do it, because if you do, we're gonna make you jump through 50 of these hoops that are dotting the i's and crossing the t, we're trying to do semantics. Are we actually trying to say, okay, yeah, we wanna work with you, residents and members of the community, we wanna make your life better too. We wanna take in the entire situation and let's make it better for you.
I can understand what you're saying, and I think what Jay said as far as us as a commission looking at what the laws are and having to stick to those. If we want to make a change, if we don't agree with the process, then I think we need to look at what our allowed uses are right now, like what we're planning on doing, what we were going to do on our last couple of meetings, and then make some suggestions to the city council and say, you know, this doesn't make sense. I think people should be able to do something like this in this type of an area. We're recommending from the commission that the council makes these changes, so it makes it a little easier for people to do some of these things that we feel like this is restricted, because a lot of these things have been in place long before any of us were involved,
I think
and
a
it's all
lot,
we have to go off of.
I think a lot of them were put in place, we just cut and paste when we became a
Exactly.
city from Weaver County
I agree with you.
ordinances.
I think part of it's looking out for the neighbors too, right?
For
You know,
sure.
the neighbors may not want it. I think
But Lynette wants it.
I'm in the lumber business. If I started selling lumber out of my backyard, I think my neighbors might be kind of pissed about that, you know, so there's things in place to keep
For sure, I
that
agree.
from happening.
And do we know what the neighbors,
I had somebody reach out to me that said they approve of the.
they like it or
They
they
like
like
it.
it?
So,
That's why we have public hearings on these, so
Sure.
that anybody that wants to can
Right.
come and express their concerns.
Right,
And like we talked about earlier, maybe they have a valid concern of why this would not be safe, not this particular one or
Right,
necessarily,
right.
but then we take that into consideration when we make the decision.
yeah.
Who did
Well,
you say somebody said they hate it?
No, no.
That
Oh.
they
The
are
two,
okay
the
with
two
it.
I've heard from,
Okay,
please approve.
I see.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to the idea of, we've got ordinances, we've got the rules, yet we're here to enforce those, but at the same, it's like a building inspector. You have the IBC code, that's the rule, but he's the interpreter, so he does have an opportunity to say, well, in this situation, I can make a judgment call to say,
Right.
this is the right thing to do. So I think we need to keep that in mind a little bit too, and err on the side of, you know, the citizen, if we can, so.
Well, I was hoping, that's why I was curious if Brandon was gonna be here tonight, because as far as the legalities of it, if our code says we do not allow that in that area, then we're bound by that, but maybe if he's already up and putting this business together,
Right.
what options do we have at this point?
Yeah,
So,
because I got two down by me. I got one guy that owns a boring company, and he brings his outflow and dumps it in the field, right? I have no idea if that's contaminated or not.
Yeah.
And he don't have a business license. The guy just down 51 that has the trucking company, he's bringing in oil tankers. I guarantee you, he don't have a license. But we don't have any. We got Nate, and that's it. And so when we get a complaint, we have to file it with Weber County, and then they send somebody out.
Yeah.
So we're
I'm all in favor of business and residents having businesses. I just think it needs to be done the right way.
well. I mean, he bought the house. He bought Gordon's house. You know, and I questioned him then because it wasn't going to do anything. But I know he's got his H2 workers in there.
Yeah, I don't think he's not in Hooper.
No, he's in Kaysville. Or,
That's right.
but I mean, at
So-
one time, he wasn't approved for electrical or water. Did he ever get that? Do you know?
Is his conditional use permit attached? Is he-
so when his original
I can pull it up if not, but it would be
He-
based off
He
that.
said yes on electrical when he initially applied back in January of '24, but he said no on plumbing. So that's the thing now, he's coming in for a bathroom. Normally, we get conditional use permit requests all the time and people will say, I'm not putting in plumbing or electrical. And then they can change their mind down the road. They don't come back to the planning commission normally.
No.
They just come in and get a building permit.
Yep.
And that was my question, like, why are we seeing this again? We already approved it, but it's because it's not being used for what he said it was gonna be used for, and especially with the agricultural exemption. And this is there's state code that goes along with this. If you're gonna get that exemption, it's not just Hooper City that requires that, and you have that here too.
Well,
You guys are all towing around the exact same point. That's right, though. It's that, right, it's against the conditional use permit he got. It says in there, agricultural use only, and this won't be. And then by adding a restroom and an office, we know it's not, so we need to either accept it or not. But, I mean, just to your point, I know we went out there today, they have a porta potty, right?
Yeah,
So they're using a restroom.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're either gonna do that or go out behind the
What
building.
would you rather have it your next door neighbor have?
I don't know what you guys want, but I'm just saying you can't say he's doing this and not, we know he's not doing it, right? So we gotta either accept it or not accept it as it is, so.
And we can't vote off of our opinion.
Yeah, I know.
We have to go by what
That's
the
your
code
guys'
says. And if we wanna
But
change
yeah,
the
so I mean,
code.
just to your point of why it's here, that's why it's here.
So
He's not,
did
he's
Nate
not
te-
following his conditional use permit.
So did
it needs
Nate
to be
tell you
modified.
he had to come back in and redo this?
Yeah,
Nate,
yeah.
okay.
He asked Nate he submitted plans similar to how Amanda described, just to add some of the bathroom, and Nate said, it's against your prior permit.
Okay.
Go get it revised, so that's why it's here.
Well, so what do we do? I mean,
vote your conscience.
well, I'll tell you what that is, but,
Well, if he's
We-
not agriculture, then don't that have to be, you can't, if that's what we're saying, if that's,
or do we say if you turn it into a nursery, can that work for him?
Does the retail nursery definition work for him?
We would have to ask him.
What does that entail? Is that $1,000 a year in retail sales?
I think Amanda has the
I have
definition.
her.
right?
Well, and then the idea of, is it a tomato or is it
Tomato.
tomato,
flower.
exactly,
Well,
or
this is his-
flower or
this is
something.
his
So it's like,
Product list from his website, everything you can order, and none of that is produce.
no, I get
Is
that,
Is
yeah.
that what you mean?
No,
Okay, I just
no,
wasn't sure if
no,
that's
I'm
what,
saying,
if he
yeah,
starts selling tomatoes, does it count for,
On the
I'm just wondering if we're,
state agriculture exemption, didn't they list nurseries type stuff? I remember I read something last week on this.
There's a nursery act.
Isn't there like flowers and plants I thought were listed in that, on the state agriculture as far as nursery?
not that I saw, sorry, let me finish looking at this
Here's
definition and then
the-
I'll grab it.
Here's
That's
your
what-
Also,
retail, there's your retail
Got it.
nursery, right there.
Okay.
Any goods,
Small
or any
corn.
grounds, structures, greenhouses, or premises in which garden farm landscaping or florist stock is propagated, grown, stored, or packed for commercial sale, where the general public may purchase goods in small quantities.
But he's saying he's wholesaling.
He's a
right?
wholesaler, that's what his,
Okay, so
everything says on there, so I don't know if he can make it work under this. If he could, then
Well,
he could
so
apply
what if
for a
they're
conditional
both?
use permit for that
What did we do?
purpose, but
What did we do with, was it Olson's greenhouse down?
on 6200,
Yeah,
that's been so long
back
ago.
when you were a kid.
Yeah, that was when I was a baby, that was probably in place
It
before
doesn't
Hoover was
seem to
ever a
fit.
city,
It
so-
doesn't seem to fit what he's doing. Just to,
Yeah.
based off the definition. But
well, but if you just switch from wholesale to retail there, there's not really
Well, what if you're
what
both?
the difference is. Yeah, that's a good point too.
Well, I think it's important too that it says this, the applicant attests that the exemption is clearly within the limitations set forth in the Utah Code and is not an attempt to circumvent the law. So, and that's if he's wanting an agricultural exemption. If he's not gonna get an agricultural exemption, then this part at least wouldn't matter, right?
And he has an agriculture exemption, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what he initially applied for and that's what he was granted.
would you guys ever want to put some wholesale nurseries in retail zones, or in residential zones? Sorry.
It's funny
I
because
think it
personally
depends
think
on
it'd
how
be
much
better.
land they have. Personally, I mean, we have farmers that farm a whole bunch of land in residential areas right now, and I guess that's how I'm viewing this, is like, yeah, he's a wholesale nursery, whether it's plants or produce, I don't know, it's grown from the ground.
I think if you're talking about wholesale, to me, I would think there would be less people coming and going. That would make more sense. If I lived in an area, I'd rather live by somebody who did wholesale and didn't have as much traffic coming in than somebody who does retail and sells goods in small quantities to the general public. And I think that's part of the issue is that, when he came in, he said there's not going to be any traffic, there's not going to be anybody coming, but that's clearly not the case. And so, and if you're talking about wholesale, you're going to have these big, enormous trucks pulling in, loading up semis worth of stuff that they're taking to different, bigger companies. Like, those are things I think that we have to take into consideration. And
To your point, and I don't know if we can make the retail piece work or not, but let's say we could. To your point, and I agree with it, is it would be better to be wholesale without but you can't have a bathroom. But yet with retail, you can have a bathroom.
well, I
You know
think
what I
it's
mean?
the agricultural exemption that's saying you can't have. It's not making sense to say this is an agricultural building that he has if there's a bathroom and an office in it, because it specifically says you can't even house anything in there that doesn't specifically relate to the crops that you're growing, according to what this exemption says. So,
So if this pulls up, I just searched this, it says this includes activities like growing crops, raising livestock, or producing horticulture products, e.g. ornamental plants, nursery products, bulbs, seeds, or sod.
and what is that on?
That's in the Utah.
But if you go back to that too, though, if you're doing all of those activities in that building, it's assumed that you've got people that need to have facilities, water, drinking, So it's like
Place to eat lunch.
we didn't specify in the code that you can't go to the bathroom or have facilities like
Well,
that.
and that's why,
But it's an assumed,
that's why he's got a honey bucket.
right?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess to clarify, and I'm not an expert by any means, but with the ag exemptions, they're generally allotted some type of building permit benefits, or they don't have quite as stringent of
Right.
building requirements, so they're generally not fit for human occupancy. So that's what the ag exemption gets to. In this case, just to give you one more piece, he didn't. I wasn't familiar with it. It was a silage pit, and there was an old building on the back. The silage pit is the new shed. It was fully constructed to city standards. So I don't know if that's fit to human occupancy or not. I don't know. So I don't know if the spirit of having him not do agriculture or only do ag in there was, I don't know. I'm not sure. I wasn't around there, but I did talk to Nate, and what was built did go through full engineering and full city inspection. I think that the question became he was blending his ag piece in the back with the residential piece in front, so they put an ag exemption or an ag qualification on it.
Yeah.
That's the reason why for ag stuff they don't normally want people in there because sometimes they don't have to go through building permit processes the same.
I think my thoughts are if we're going by what he's currently doing and what our code currently says, I don't think we can approve it based on how it stands right now. If we wanted to maybe talk to, see if the commission feels like we need to change and allow for wholesale nursery areas in residential, and then maybe send that recommendation up to the council, maybe put things on hold with him until that change is made. I don't know if it's worth changing our ordinances over this, or if I just don't know what our workaround is to help him so that he's still able to do what he wants to do, and we're still following what the law says.
Well, if you go back to that ordinance, and maybe I'm trying to make something that's not, but when you do all of those activities, you've got to go to the restroom somewhere, somehow. Honey bucket, back of the building,
I think
Maverick, something.
if it was inside, it'd be less unsightly, I guess, to the rest of the neighborhood.
So, I agree with what you're saying. We need to follow the law here, but at the same time, that's why we're here too, is to make an assessment and an evaluation. And I would say, back to your other question of changing the ordinance, I would say absolutely, because what he's asking to me is not unreasonable. Now, how he's going about it, and maybe is he
Been upfront about it, that's.
going about it the wrong way and maybe skirting another one, that may be, and would have to check that out. But again, then back to what the attorney said, he says, you need to take each item by itself.
Yeah.
Now, if we need to go out and have him change something because he's breaking the law over here, but yet what he's requesting over here is okay,
I think what you're saying makes sense. I think there's two different things we're looking at, like Malcolm said, for this agricultural exemption. I think that there's certain things that they're given freedoms as far as the building permits and things that they have to have
yeah,
when they are given the permit for that structure. And so it could be that he just can no longer have the agricultural exemption.
right,
If he wants to put a bathroom and those things in, you can't have that under that.
yeah,
So maybe we say, okay, we're taking away this, you have to build it to code to make sure that it meets
Sure.
that criteria.
yeah,
But then the other part of the puzzle we have to look at is the fact that currently our code will not allow a wholesale nursery in an R1 zone.
So can he
So-
apply for a variance?
yeah.
Variances are my understanding is they're pretty hard to get because he's gonna
Right.
go exactly by what the law says. Brandon would be the one to decide on that.
So what read what you said again.
So this is on eligible sales tax exemption for agriculture products, which falls under the agriculture exemption. But they're eligible to, I assume if you're not collecting sales tax on it, it would fall under the agriculture exemption as well. But it says your garden produce, or producing horticulture products, ornamental plants, nursery products, bulbs, seeds, and sod. So I feel like flowers, that's based off of that definition.
So are we,
So the code I got from Nate Tolman is 15A-1-204, and this talks about the exemptions. And it's several pages long. We've got only about 10 minutes before we're gonna start. So I don't know if we wanna.
so the question, you don't want people in the building because the building was built to agriculture standards?
Except that he did build it to current building codes.
Yeah.
So that's not the question.
Yeah. So our question is, for me, is just if we deem growing flowers the same
In
as
my
growing
opinion, if it's
produce.
I'd rather see a bathroom inside than a honey bucket outside. If that's,
That's
according to
what I'm-
Brandon, if that's what we're,
Right. Voting on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
We spent.
Brandon said we've already
You got Malcolm?
approved this.
Yeah,
You're only looking at this piece.
exactly. So let's look at this piece.
And
If there's
it's
other issues
the
on the
code.
other one, then you go and address that in a separate issue.
I think that's what this comes down to tonight, is the bathroom in the building, not necessarily the overall arching.
Well, their consideration, the last commission, or the planning commission could have taken when they did the conditional use permit, the way they did was the back piece was, you know, agricultural in nature, this was residential, so they might have just not wanted a lap between the two. Right, a crossover where he's doing agricultural work on his residential piece up front, but I don't know, it's a little hard to, I don't know, control as we're seeing.
For sure.
Well, let's take the last, you can ask them some questions, but the last one, H.L. Parker, this has a lot of history as well. Reading over the developer agreement, I guess my question is, when I was looking at this, is what's gonna be best for the residents and Hooper at this time.
Well, we're in a catch-22, right?
Yeah.
You can't leave it like it is, because like I said, I drove by there before coming up here. Still got a 2-foot drop off and barely have curb, no sidewalk. But it's
Where's
been
the drop off, Blake?
right along 5900 south, on the south side.
Okay.
It drops off about, he needs to bring in about 1.5 feet, 18 inches of fill before he puts his pavement to his curb and gutter that's 50 feet off the current pavement.
Okay.
Why does he want to extend, you know? I mean, 'cause he
Well,
doesn't
They're
have
not
to-
done.
Yeah, it's not done. He has things.
But
to
is
do.
he currently working on it though?
It's been
Coming
across
up.
since like 2020 is
2020.
when it started,
Oh,
and
wow.
this will be their 3rd extension.
Okay.
But I don't
This is
feel like we
19.
really have any, they started it in 2019, but it was actually signed in 2020 if you go back, but they, I don't think there's anything that we can do other than extend it
Yeah.
because they're vested.
Yeah.
And
Well,
our new subdivision ordinance that we did, it would, if this had expired, they wouldn't be vested, the vesting would have expired with that too. So then we would have been able to renegotiate if we needed to, but I don't see what choice they've gotta finish it.
do we have escrow money? So let's say,
We have 10% contingency, yeah.
so let's say we tell them, no, we're not gonna extend.
Okay.
Then, as a city, we would have to take that escrow funds and finish it, right?
That's kind of what the escrow
I mean,
funds
cause
are
you're not
there.
gonna leave it with a 2-foot drop off, it's,
Yeah, I don't know if the escrow funds would be sufficient to finish it, but I think the escrow funds are there to, I think they would put it in a, you know, a safe situation. But I don't know, I don't think the city's ever done that, so I wouldn't wanna speculate
Well,
too much
and
on what
I-
that process would look like, but yeah, that's essentially.
but
my
10%'s not gonna
Yeah.
pay
Probably
for
wouldn't
those,
finish, yeah.
no way,
No.
compared to what it costs
What-
right back
what-
here,
What's the worst? What's the impact if we extend? Just,
nothing.
yeah, okay.
I
I
think,
mean, the last extension was because the weather
Yeah,
was bad and they couldn't get on the ground, but I gotta kinda laugh at that because I got 2 buddies that put in 40 lot subdivisions right over in West Point in the same time frame, and they're built out. So I think it's money.
Of course it is. It's for sale. You've seen it for sale. So.
Yeah. Ink up.
So I don't.
I did see it for sale.
So I think we're in a catch-22. I mean, you gotta extend, or we'll never get anything done.
yeah.
I felt like that was the only step forward in that, so I don't have anything else.
I have a couple of things I'd like to talk about, campus.
Yeah.
For one, as far as our agendas, we've always had it where we had volunteers for the pledge and the prayer, and I feel like we need to keep it that way. I think praying publicly is uncomfortable for some people, and I think it's also a violation of their personal beliefs. I would like to see us continue to.
How does the council do it? Do they pre-assign it?
They've always
volunteer.
volunteered until this last year, and now it's just assigned. So, but I don't.
And that's not. I didn't assign these.
Well, so yeah, so if
Can we just decide it in this work session?
Yeah, that's
Just
the other
say-
thing, like our policies and procedures that we're working on, we need to get those back so that we can, as a group, look at those and see what we want. And so I was thinking maybe we could make sure everybody has a copy of those, look at it, see if there's any changes that anybody wants. And then when we come to our next meeting during the work meeting, if there's any revisions, talk about those and then vote in the next meeting so that we can get those put in place. Because that will help alleviate a lot of the confusion with
Yeah.
these, so.
The one thing on those policies and procedures, I think a lot of those, at least my personal, what I think is to keep it as a administrating body, I think those should be put in. I think our city code and planning commission is lacking in some aspects when you go out and look at other city codes as far as like governing, like what's a majority vote, that we have 4 members but does that make 3? Okay, 3 is majority. Do you need a supermajority when there's 5? Or like what things need a supermajority versus just a regular majority when voting? And I think those would be better set at the ordinance level than rather in our bylaws. Just some things, so it's just structured there on that sense. Not saying that we don't need our own bylaws and things, but I think there's some things that need to be addressed at that level.
I think as far as what constitutes a quorum, that's in our current ordinances. When they just updated the planning commission ordinance, and that is in there because it used to be 3, now it's 4. And I understand when you say a supermajority, I don't know if there's anything that would necessarily require that, but I mean, I guess we could decide.
I'm just saying
But-
before it came up and is like a question, I think that would be,
Yeah.
it's better to hash things out and have a rule set that you follow before things come up, rather than trying to fix it in the.
Well, and maybe we could, if everybody looks at it in the meantime, and then we come together in our work meeting and everybody talks about what they feel like they want that document to look like, because it's our choice how we want to do it, it's the planning commission's, so,
Right.
so. I'd like to.
interrupt you guys, sorry. I have to read off your guys' terms. It was decided upon by city council. Blake Sedling, you have 4 years. Sheldon Greener, 4 years. Gene Larson, 1 year. Jason McCormick, 3 years. Steve Wall, 3 years. Amanda Prince, you have 2 years remaining. And Bryce Woodison, you have 2 years remaining.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
We can dismiss before take back the break.
Sure.
Oh, now you come.
Recording in progress.
All right, I'd like to welcome you out to our planning commission meeting for March 13th, 2025. We just finished up our work meeting. We'll now proceed. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll open our ceremonies by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. That will be led by Commissioner Prince, and then we'll have a prayer given by Commissioner Severing. So all rise.
Please repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee as a planning commission and citizens of Hooper, we pray that we might be able to make decisions based on facts and data and be able to do those things that would help grow our community and continue to bless the lives of the citizens in this community. And these things we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Prince. Thank you, Commissioner Severing, for doing that for us. As far as items of consent go, we'll first review has everybody had a chance to review the minutes dated January 9th, 2025? And is there any amendments or things that you didn't?
Sorry. Couple things. Number one, we still need to approve the minutes for December 12th's meeting. That was not done in our January 9th meeting because we did not have a quorum of those in attendance for that that December 12th meeting. So now that we have Commissioner Greener and Commissioner Severing back, we should have enough. Can we do that during this meeting, Brandon, or do we have to wait because it wasn't noticed that we're going to approve those minutes?
I mean, the safer bet would be to throw it on the next agenda, so that it's just, so everybody knows you're gonna do that. But I agree with you, you gotta technically, get that done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, as far as the minutes for January 9th, the only addition that I had on there, I think it's important that during the work meeting, we reference the fact that we received clarification that the chair of the Planning Commission does now vote. That's kind of a big deal because we haven't been doing that in the past, and so I think that needs to show in the record. That was my only addition.
Anybody else? All right, with those additions, I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from Planning Commission meeting dated January 9th, 2025.
I'll second.
We've had a motion by Commissioner Widdowson and a second by Commissioner Prince. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous and passes. All right, we'll now go into the action items on the agenda. And this is for, the first action item is for conditional use permit request for Rhett Hickman for an oversized structure totaling 2,000 square feet located at 5994 West, 5900 South. I will now turn some time over to staff for presentation on that property.
Are you guys okay if I sit here from now on?
As long as we can hear you.
It's exhausting going up there. Alright, we reviewed this application at a staff level. It's an oversized structure, totally 2,000 square feet. It's under our maximum height requirement at 23 feet and 6 inches. For use for storage. The applicant didn't indicate any utility of plumbing, electrical, or a business being operated there, so it was a fairly straightforward oversized structure. You can see the home here, where it'll be, and there's the location of where the shop will be placed. They did check for utilities and setbacks. They didn't have any easements, so they just set to the setbacks, without them. So 5 feet rear, 5 feet interior side, and there's a rendering of what the shop could look like, likely. That's everything.
Thank you, Malcolm. We'll now ask, is there a representative from Rhett Hickman to come before the commission?
Yeah, I'm here.
You can come, please state your name, and then if anybody has questions, they'll ask them.
Yeah, I'm Rhett Hickman, the property owner.
You sure you only want to do 2,000 feet?
Yeah. Yep.
What's your main use going to be for it?
Just storage, boats, stuff like that.
So you indicated you weren't going to put in any electrical or plumbing at this point. Are you stubbing in for that at all? Or?
We're gonna stop electrical, but
Okay, just so you know, when you get to that point, you'll need to come into the city and get the correct permits for that.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you. Now open this to a public hearing to receive input on this conditional use permit. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak to this conditional use permit?
I guess this is where I would ask questions.
Yeah, so please just state your
I'm
name.
Shauna Ray, and I live in Hooper. I don't know what you mean, but my question on something like this, you said that you're not going to put power in. How are you going to open up those doors and stuff? Is that strong?
Spring loaded, yeah.
And I mean, my only thing is if you're using it for storage and you're not putting power into it now, like are you gonna like make it?
So technically, what you need to do is direct your questions to the commission.
Okay, and that's what
And
I
then
need to
if
know. That's good.
Well, no, you can talk, we can't
Oh,
really
sorry.
say, so
Oh,
direct your
sorry.
questions this way, and then when the applicant comes back up later, they can ask those to that.
Okay, sorry. My question was just asking him how if like if it's going to be used for storage, it's got two doors, and there's no power. How are they going to be able to use that with no power? That's my question. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to kind of respond to that?
Thank you. Now, is there any other public comments? We'll close the public comment section. Now bring this back to commission for discussion and a motion.
I thought everything looked good. Are you wanting a motion right now?
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the conditional use permit request for Rhett Hickman for an oversized structure totaling 2,000 square feet located at 5994 West, 5900 South.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve the permit request for Rhett Hickman at 5994 West, 5900 South for an oversized structure of 2,000 square feet by Commissioner Prince. Do we have and a second by Commissioner Wall? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. On to our next item, we have a conditional use permit for Elena Winter for a daycare located at 6049 West, 4600 South. We'll now turn some time back over to staff for a presentation.
I think we covered this one fairly well in our staff meeting, or in your guys' earlier meeting, but work meeting, let's see. Oh, there we go. Here's just the application that you guys have in front of you just so the public can see it. It's a conditional use permit for a home group daycare. I did qualify or verify with the applicant there wouldn't be more than 12 at a time. That's in our code, so it'd just be in two different shifts. If you have any questions on that, you can ask the applicant. Let's see. Here's a site plan of just what the functionality of the daycare would be and a few of those things. We did talk in our work meeting. We've made the applicant aware that the main home will need to be a part of it, which she's been good to comply with and work with. And so that's everything from the staff level in terms of getting this one in front of you guys. Let me see if, yeah, that's all. So.
Thank you, Malcolm. Is there a representative from the applicant that would come forward at this time?
I hope you guys like my art. I actually submitted a better, one that I made with my computer after this, but this is a little embarrassing, but yeah.
Yeah, Nate told me that our building inspector said there's a lot better one. I got that one.
You just wanted to embarrass me.
No.
Can you tell us your name, please, just for the record, and if you are a Hooper resident?
Yes, Elena Winter, and I'm a Hooper resident.
So, my question, you stayed on there 12 kids, right? Is that including your own or in addition to your own kids, or do you?
Yeah, my daughter will be included in that. I just have one child, and so it's separated into a morning session and an afternoon session, and it'll be a max of 12 children per session.
So on your application, where it asks about daycare operator state certification. You put not applicable, and then you marked the area where it says if you do not need to be licensed to provide an exemption letter from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing. Do you have an exemption letter?
Yes, they just have a general one that I thought I emailed it to the admin, but it's just found on the child care website for the state. So I just have to have that posted so that the parents are aware of that. So
Okay, so just in looking at the state's requirements, and one thing that you had mentioned is you weren't sure whether it would be a daycare facility or the daycare home group. I think the daycare facility fits more what you're doing. Is this going to be like a daycare or will it be a preschool?
it's going to be a preschool.
Okay, so you're not preparing meals and changing diapers and all that kind of stuff there?
No.
Okay, because that was some of the things that they talked about on there, and then they also have some square footage requirements depending on how many children you'll have there at one time.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to make sure that we have the correct documentation from the state when we make the decision, so that we don't have any issues down the road for approving something that wasn't okay. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can email it to the admin again because it's I believe it's 30 square feet per child. Now I can't remember.
it's 35, I think.
35. Okay. Yeah. I was close. But yeah. So I have a 12 by 32 foot space, and then in my home, it's 24 by 16. So yeah, we'll be complying with those requirements, and then the other, like you said, the other requirements were no preparing of food, so we'll just have like pre-prepared snacks, like maybe a microwave so we can heat things up. But and then there'd be no changing of diapers. So if a child has an accident, if they'll have a set of clothes, we'll change them. If not, we'll just call the parents. So, and then it's under 4 hours as well. So the morning session is 2.5 hours, and the afternoon is 3.5 hours. So they're under that limit for unlicensed daycare.
Great.
Hopefully I answered everything.
And what about parking and drop off?
Yes. So sorry, who asked that? Oh, hi. I didn't hear where that came from. Yeah. So we put in a parking pad in the front of our property, so it goes almost all the way across our 150 foot. I think it stops right at our driveway, so it's about 80 feet of parking, and then so it should fit 8 to about 6 to 8 cars in there. So they'll just come and park, and then so for the morning drop off, they'll park, walk their children in, and then for afternoon they come and park and walk the children out. So
Thank you.
Are your times going to be staggered to accommodate so everybody's not coming and going at the same?
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I was thinking about that. Well, because I set in our hours a 15-minute window for pickup, kind of with that in mind. But I might, when I get things going, I might set some staggered times so that. But there shouldn't be more than like 6 to 8 cars at a time. If I do end up maxing out and having 12 students in a class, then I could probably do two time slots. So it's actually a great suggestion.
Any other questions from the commission?
Can you speak to your experience running a daycare or owning a daycare or working in a daycare?
Yes.
That was from above.
That was a Commissioner Sheldon Greener. He's on Zoom, so that's where that
Hello.
Sheldon question came from.
Yes, so I've worked at preschools for the last couple years. I actually worked at Dirt Learning before this. Like, I don't know, I guess that's a different city, but yeah, so I've had previous preschool experience, and then I actually ran an adult learning, so I ran, this isn't for early child development, but I ran an ESL school for several years, and then we shut down in COVID. So I have a couple certifications, and my bachelor's degree is in education, but I have a lot of experience. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What about a business license? Do you have that, or?
Yes, so we're in the process of that right now.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so our,
I think Morgan wanted you to get this first. Does that
Yeah.
sound right?
yeah, so we're in getting this step first, and then we're still in the process actually of some approvals and things for our sheds, and then our business license. So, but we're not opening until we'll have those.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you for your time. I'll open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that would like to come and comment on this conditional use permit? All right, looks like there's no public comment, so we'll now bring this back. We'll close the public comment section and we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I think as long as she has that exemption from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing, if you'll forward that to us, I think everything seems good to go. That was my only concern.
Any other discussion? Now entertain a motion for the conditional use permit for Eliana Winter for a daycare located at 6449 West, 4600 South.
I'll motion that we approve the conditional use permit request for Elenia Winter for a daycare located at 6049 West, 4600 South, with the condition that she forward her exemption letter from the Bureau of Child Care Licensing to the city.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Prince and a second from Commissioner Widdowson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a conditional use permit request for Tyler Larkin located at 6990 West, 5100 South. And this request is to add a bathroom and office space within the existing oversized structure there. Turn this some time over to staff for presentation.
Not a lot for the staff other than the items on this slide. You should have the full CUP listed in your packet. The entire reason for coming is it had an agricultural only condition placed on it, so when he went to add a bathroom, Nate wanted him to come in and review his CUP or change it, so that's why we recommended he come here for a conditional use permit review. A couple of things, just a little bit of diligence from the staff. Inspections were done by Nate in November 2024, and the final, or when you did do it, like I think I mentioned in your work meeting, it was fully inspected and had engineered drawings and met engineering. So there wasn't any ag exemption on the addition. That's, on the building, I think you can see on this next slide. There you go. This was existing. Is that correct, Tyler? This was existing. This was a silage pit. This was all engineered and constructed to city ordinance and code. This is where the proposed office space and restroom are being. But again, this was existing, so I can't speak to, Nate didn't inspect any of this. This was built in, I think, the early 90s, but that's everything staff looked into on this one.
Thank you, staff. Is there a representative from the Tyler Larkin that could come forward to answer some questions? Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Tyler Larkin, and I live my property is at 6690 West, 5100 South.
So I guess in the work meeting we had discussion on, existing, why was this change not presented the first time you came in to apply for the conditional use permit?
Great question. So originally I wasn't going to use it for that, and then as we got more involved down there, my sister didn't like using the porta potty there. And it gets hot in summer, so she asked for a bathroom, so we're trying to give her one.
I just realized this now that I've seen this plan, where's the egress for, if she had to leave, fire or whatever it is, how do they get out of that bathroom in that office?
There's a man door kind of at the bottom of the screen on the left side.
But that's a wall, right? You got a wall, that's a,
So there's a man door there.
oh, there is a man door there?
Yeah. And then there's a garage door on each end.
Yeah, because the plan doesn't show a man door between the bathroom and the office.
I can correct that if you'd like.
Well, I just think, and Nate would probably hook you on that. I would think, I mean, I'm not up on the uniform building code, but I would think you'd have to have some kind of egress to get out of there if something was to happen.
If both of those were replaced, that would cover it.
What about windows? There's windows in all the rooms.
Well, but I believe the window has to be 18 by 42 inches tall for egress to be able to, so a fireman, if they had to, could get in and get out with air packs on. I think that's how the code, I mean, you're talking a long time ago when I was a window guy, so I can't remember, but I'd double check that, because I think the window, because like in the basements right now, they have to be at least 42 inches tall. And I think the minimum is 3 feet wide, and that allows for a fireman to get into the window with an air pack on if they had to. I know that doesn't really count for out here, but that's what it is for a home that I know of.
So each window is 48 inches by 48 inches.
Okay? But aren't them sit on the top of the silo wall, and the silo wall is 6-8 feet off the ground, isn't it? The cement wall?
Yeah, it's 6 feet off the ground. So you'd have to probably get on a toilet or on the countertop to get out the window if you were locked in the bathroom.
So I think one of the concerns, the reason why this came back to the planning commission, because normally if you come in for a conditional use permit and you say, I'm not going to do plumbing or electrical, we approve it that way, and then if you change your mind, you would just come into the city and pull the right permits and go through that process. So normally it wouldn't come back to us just because you want to put a bathroom in an office. But the reason why it was brought back to us is that initially you had filed for an agricultural exemption. And if you look at the application that you had filled out, it talks about, I understand storing motorhomes, cars, or any kind of storage or use other than what would pertain to agricultural use is prohibited. I also understand that any use that does not comply with all of the provisions of this permit or the requirements of state or municipal law is unlawful and may render my permit null and void. And then it defines agricultural use, which means a use which relates to the tilling of soil and raising of crops, or keeping or raising domestic animals. Not for human occupancy, means use of a structure for purposes other than protection or comfort of human beings, but allows people to enter the structure for maintenance and repair, and for the care of livestock, crops, or equipment intended for agricultural use which are kept there. And then you've written down greenhouses not for retail. So my understanding is that you're running this as a wholesale business. When we talked before, when you came in last year, you had mentioned that it wasn't going to be, that you grew the plants just for your business, your company alone, and that you would not have any customers coming, that there wouldn't be any traffic. And so from what I've looked at, like on your company website and everything, that appears to have changed. Is my understanding correct that this will be a wholesale business and that you will have people that can set appointments to come out and do business there? Or?
So there will be no customers coming down to this nursery. And on the website, it shouldn't say anything like that or specify that anything about the ability of anyone coming down and buying plants. It's more for us to just grow and stock hold for our landscape company.
Okay, but is it a wholesale? I mean, I'm just,
Not wholesale.
so I just want to, because I want to make sure I understand. This is from your page. Providing beautiful wholesale ornamental plants to northern Utah. We are a dedicated wholesale nursery located in Hooper, Utah, set to open in spring of 2025. Our mission is simple: to provide stunning ornamental plants to wholesalers and landscape contractors. Is that from your website, or am I misunderstanding?
No, I
Sorry.
think that is correct. It's more for other landscapers to see what we offer, but it's not like you're going to have homeowners coming there to look at it. It's more for a contractor. If they come, they bring a truck and trailer, they grab what they want, and then they leave.
Okay.
More of it, but you gotta present it to the landscapers that we offer plants and trees.
Okay, so the reason for the concern is it's located in a residential zone, and so currently our code does not allow for a wholesale nursery in an R1 zone. And that's defined as any grounds, structures, greenhouses, or premises in which garden, farm, landscaping, or florist stock is propagated, grown, stored, or packed for commercial sale, and where the owner-operator sells the goods in large quantities to a limited number of buyers. So my concern, and maybe Brandon, I don't know if you can give us some direction on this, if this is not an allowed use in that zone, how do we look at this as far as approving anything where it's currently not in compliance with our code, at least the way I'm understanding it?
Well, I think you could differentiate, are you approving a business, or are you giving a conditional use to put into this space what he's asking for? I mean, even if you approve a conditional use simply on this request, add a bathroom and an office, okay, that's all you've done. You've allowed a conditional use for a bathroom and an office in this structure, that's all you've done. You have not given an exemption or an allowance for him to do something that's contrary to our code as far as whatever he's going to do use-wise. So that would be a separate issue. If he's doing something use-wise that's not allowed in the zone, that come up and would come up, and that would have to be addressed at that point. So I don't think you would interpret what you're doing as somehow allowing him to do something that's prohibited. If he's saying, look, I want a bathroom and an office in this structure, that's what you're limiting it to. You could place a condition on it that he'd be in compliance with any other, city ordinance, if you want to. If you want to make that a condition, I mean, he has to be anyway.
Okay.
But if you want to make it clear that what you're doing is not, giving some kind of a free pass to violate the ordinances, you could put that as a condition. And I would just go as far as saying, the condition on this is that you still comply with all of the applicable city ordinances, and if he wants to do something that is contrary to it, that would have to be addressed at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other question for Mr. Hickman? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. We'll now open it for public hearing on the conditional use permit requested for Tyler Larkin, located at 6690 West, 5100 South, for the addition of a bathroom and office space in the oversized structure. Is there any public comment? Please just state your name and if you're a Hooper resident.
Yes. I'm a Hooper resident. My name is Weston Flynn. I actually live on the same road as Tyler does. I'm a little concerned about, he's hooking into power, he's hooking into water, he's hooking into sewer. My wife and I have been for 2 years trying to get a building permit, and we have to pay improvement costs of upwards to $80,000 just to build on our property. He's doing all the same things. Why doesn't he have to improve his? He's got an open ditch. Why isn't he paying for improvements like I am? We're 6th generation farmers. We've been here 150 years. I farm the land just like my parents do, and it's frustrating to see someone be given all these privileges who's been here 5 minutes, but I've been having to jump through hoops for 2 years. I've had surveyors. I've actually worked with several surveyors, several engineers, and we just can't get through the city process. And now we're finally getting to the point where hopefully we can meet next time. But my frustration is, it's kind of like Manda, is it really being used for agricultural use? Because a lot of us are seeing tons of shipping containers in the back. Are they full of fertilizer? What if those catch on fire? You know, he's storing things on the property that aren't being tilled, aren't being used, they're being stored there, right? I don't know what's in there. You know, I don't know if he lives here, because we can see him around, and it feels like it's a commercial business. You look at the greenhouses and see how nice they are. It's like, those aren't just for landscapers to come see. Those are bricks inside. You're making this a place where wholesale can happen. You know, and this is conjecture, but I'm just really confused by, he's doing all the same things I'm doing, but as a homeowner, if you start making all these improvements to your property, just as like a new homeowner does, when does that line cross to where they have to pay improvements like I do? Because by the time I get to build, I'll have to spend $110,000. Did he have to spend that? No, he bought a property and now he gets to do all of the things that I get to do, but I'm someone who lives on land. I'm the one who has heritage here. You know, I'm the one who farms out here every summer. You know, and if you start to lose people like us, Hooper won't exist. And you'll have wholesalers coming down the street making big changes. And I see an office space, I see a bathroom, I'm seeing people are coming in and buying things at wholesale price. That's what I see. And so it doesn't reflect nicely. And I haven't seen letters. I had to send out letters. I sent them last July to all my neighbors about the things we were doing. And it sounds like he didn't approve those kind of things at the beginning. He's like making changes last minute and he's trying to get it through. And so where is the line between him having to make improvements and me making improvements when we're doing the same thing? Except for I'm dividing a property and he already owns one. But we're doing the same things. Hooking into power, hooking into water, hooking into sewer. We're paying all the impact fees. And how is he watering his plants? Does he have water shares? Is he using culinary? Is he going to water all those plants with culinary water, which is for residential properties? There's so many things that I've thought about. I'm just like, how is this happening? Like, we're been sitting here for 2 years frustrated. Why is it that he's being given all these approvals when we can barely get through the process? So, those are just some of my thoughts. I went over the 3 minutes, but hey, I like having new neighbors. Tyler could be here, he could work with us, but don't mislead us. We've been here 150 years. The original Fowers Cabin is on our property. You know, we want to be part of the community, and I want to stay here with my kids. And if it costs us $110,000, why can't it cost that for him? Why is it being expensive for me?
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Sean Reagan, and I kind of have the same issue that I've had at my house, kind of like what this guy's going through. And I live up close to Freedom Elementary, and I built a swimming pool. I spent $125,000 in swim pool and new fence and everything. And 2 years later, they came out and said that my pool, or it wasn't finished, I guess, like the permit wasn't finished. So they came and did my permit, everything was fine with my permit. But the guy that lives next door to me, it took him 2 times. I was like, these guys, it took them 2 years to find out, to tell me that my permit needs to be finished.
Is this public comment directed toward this conditional use permit?
Probably somewhere.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm just saying, you know what, I think that it's a fair thing to say, you know what, maybe find out exactly what's going on, and if all the stuff, and let it go if it is good, or maybe make them do other things and put in, you know, like the conditional use. I just don't feel like it should just be approved.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Now I'll close the public comment.
Actually, can I ask a question back to Tyler?
Yep.
What roadblocks are you having, and why is it taking you 2 years to get all those permits?
Well, I've been through, we were through the Bryant crisis when he left. He gave us...
Tyler, could you come to the...
Me?
Or...
Oh, I'm not Tyler. I'm Weston.
Oh, sorry. That's my mistake, sorry.
Well, what's taken us so long is we've had multiple surveys, you know. We had one guy come through and he's like, yeah, I work with Brian all the time, let me get it done for you. And then we kept waiting, we kept requesting, getting a hold of our surveyor, getting on his list to get those things done. And then he's like, well, Brian's not here anymore, now we got new processes. And I'm kind of in this new process, and I've kind of been working with Malcolm here. He's been great with me, you know. I've enjoyed working with Malcolm. But we were just trying to get through, and then the engineer that the guy requested us to help finish our project quoted us almost $20,000 just for land, just to say that, yeah, here's the road, here's the lines, this is what we need. And I was like, and the reason he charged us $20,000 was because he didn't want to work with Hooper City. And he was like, I'm having a hard time with this. And he's done it before. And so then we had to go find another surveyor. And then that took a process. And we had to get on his list. And then we had to get to his engineer. And then by the time we got everything wrapped up, I had documents printed, everything looked good. Come to find out, the documents I gave, I went up to Brigham City, picked them up, brought them here. They weren't the ones that they wanted, even though they said they were the ones they wanted. And then I had to go back and get those printed. And here's the deal, it was Christmas break, winter, Thanksgiving, all the holidays, everything got pushed back. It's just one delay after another. We were here last week, or last month. There was another storm, just like today. It seems like God doesn't want us to have a planning commission, right? And so I'm trying to be fair. I understand that there's things that need to be done, and I'm appreciative that we've got it down to one meeting where I don't have to go back to city and then come back. But like I sent out flyers last June. I have sent my will serve letters 3 different times to 3 different people. I've sat on this table a year ago to talk about what needs to happen. And I've also sent my fence letter 4 times. So, yeah, so there's a lot of dropping the ball, and there's been a lot of transition from when we were meeting with Brian. And his way of doing things was very different than Taylor's and JUB and the contractors you guys have hired. And so we've just dealt with that frustration of trying to just get through. And so hopefully we'll pass this next week, but it just keeps getting pushed on and on and on. And so
I'm with you.
Yeah.
It took my son almost 2 years, so.
And yeah, we're about to 2 years.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, with this property down the street, he's hooking up to power, he's doing all the things I'm doing. Why is it that he doesn't have to improve his lot? You know, if he's doing all the same things.
Well, we gotta remember what Brandon just said. As far as what he does business-wise is a whole nother meeting. This meeting here is just if we're gonna allow him to put a bathroom and an office in an existing building.
But why would you need a building and an office if you're selling plants? I mean, that's the problem I have. That's why I'm here. Why is there an office there? We don't have an office on our farm. It's called a living room table, and we just write stuff out and we go. You know, that's what it is. So we don't even need an office. Why is there that transaction happening? Why is there a bathroom? If they're just dropping by, looking at plants and leaving, why are they leaving? And how's he watering his crops? You know, how's he doing those things? He can build 4 structures, and I can barely build 1. So, something to think about. That's all it is. It's just something to think about, saying if we're going to have all these people make all these improvements who are new to the area, and you're expecting us to do the same things, but jump through more hoops, what's the deal with that? And it's not just me.
Thank you.
This is the value of people on the street I talk to.
I get it.
Yeah. If you have questions, you can talk to me.
I'll bring it close. Is there any other public comment? Now we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I got a question for Tyler, if he wants to come back to the. You own the house, you bought the house and the land from Gordon, so why can't you use the home for the restroom facilities in the office that's on the existing ground?
So on the home, I currently have some employees that.
So that's where your H2 workers are living, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And my sister doesn't prefer going into their space.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do I answer your questions?
Oh no, it's
anyone
really more
wanna
for
know?
them. It's just, where do we draw the lines? Because you and I are doing the same things.
So let's not get into a discussion between the two of you guys. Probably do that offline.
Any other questions?
Any other discussion?
For the applicant or between the commission?
Between the commission.
Okay. So I personally feel that if we approve this bathroom, sorry, this microphone is so touchy, the bathroom in the office that we do need to put the stipulation on there that none of the work can go forward on that until the applicant is in compliance with all city ordinances regarding that property. Because we want to make sure that we're not allowing something to continue that our ordinances don't support. And so that would be my recommendation. I think that if the other part of that is he's applied for this agricultural exemption, and that, to me, that's not what this is anymore. And I think that was why the building inspector also had concerns and brought that back to us so that the commission could look at it. Those are my thoughts.
So I have another question. If I want to rezone that shop to my personal house, because that's what it is, then can I do that? I'm not sure, or if anyone can pull up the form that says that when I did the addition was agriculture.
I'm confused. What was the question? You saying this is your personal house? Did I misunderstand? Sorry.
No, I apologize. So on the building, it's part of the house. It's not part of the greenhouses. And when I did the extension.
You're talking specifically just about the property piece. The building sits up with the property of the house, not the greenhouse portion of the
Yeah, I think
of
the
the ag exemption.
I think it went right behind the side. Jordan had it right behind the silo.
So my question is, I don't remember filing it. Maybe I did, but the agriculture for that addition. Because when I did that, I still got permits in engineering and did everything with the city. But when you're doing an agriculture, like a greenhouse or something else, you don't necessarily need all those approvals. So I'm just curious if it sounds like that form was under agriculture, and do we need to change it, or are we saying we can't change it now that it's been that way?
So
and just say it's part of the home, Tyler Larkin's house.
So the greenhouses, those are on a separate portion from what this building is. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay. So then maybe the agricultural exemption wouldn't come into play with this, but the zoning of what is allowed in Hooper as far as in a residential zone being able to run a wholesale operation, that's something that would need to be brought into compliance. And so my thoughts are, before we approve anything, you need to be in compliance with that business.
With the ag business.
With the business, the wholesale business that you are running, right? Am I misunderstanding that?
I believe that, Tyler, you got a conditional use permit with the understanding that it was going to be used for ag purposes on a non-ag piece, and so they said ag purposes only, and so to use that building in conjunction with your agricultural business, that's kind of how they structured the permit. That's how I've read into it. So I think that's kind of how they helped you be able to run your ag business and then know that, hey, we're going to take our agricultural products up to the shed, even though it's not on our ag piece. So I think that's what they did then. And so that's why you're able to operate the way that you have in out of that building. That's my understanding.
So would everyone feel more comfortable then if it wasn't that way?
Wasn't it what way? Sorry, can you be more
An
specific?
agriculture instead of just a homeowner.
The problem is it's a business. It's a wholesale nursery. It fits that definition in our code. And in a residential area, we don't allow. That's not allowed in our code. So that's what the problem is. That's the issue that I'm seeing. And the only thing we could do, my understanding is you could either, I don't know if that's even something you could ask for a variance on, or if that's something that would require an ordinance change in order to accommodate that particular use.
Well, I don't know about that, and I don't know that you even need to get into that part at this moment. Like, right, what's in front of you is just conditional use permit to be able to add an office and a bathroom. So if you're gonna grant that conditional use permit, my theory was, okay, well, put the condition on it that this is not an allowance to violate any of our ordinances. You gotta still be in compliance. I don't know that you need to put a limit. I don't know how that functions as far as making sure he's in compliance versus not before he builds. I don't know how that works on the staff side. But I think from your approval side, you could definitely say, okay, if we're gonna do this conditional use, to add those pieces, we're gonna add the condition, or just reaffirm the position that the city is not waiving any of our ordinances related to use on the property. Just make sure you're in compliance with the use that's allowed in that, parcel. And then if he's not, then, we get flagged and then we'd have to stop work, so.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you feel like you're in compliance with the permit that you got when you received it? Do you feel like you're in compliance?
I think so. I know, like, you guys see a luxury greenhouse down there, but it's still the same thing. When you go buy your hay, you're driving a truck and trailer and they load you with hay, and they're just gonna do the same thing where you see you might see a company truck or a truck that says Larkin, or you might see landscaping on the side, and they're gonna get loaded up with some trees and some shrubs. The only difference is, and when we bill, we gotta bill other people. There's, 14, 15 other landscapers we sell to, and you bill them. You need an office, you file it, you gotta keep it for 7 years for tax purposes, you just gotta store it somewhere. So that's just kind of why we wanna do the office and just keep it there. Don't take it to my sister's house or my house, just keep it there.
So when the building inspector come down and spoke with you or inspected, did he indicate that you were or were not in compliance?
For what part? For when I built it?
Why was he there?
When we did the addition?
No, in order for you to fill out this new oversized structure conditional use permit, why was he there? Do you know? Did he verbalize anything to you?
Is that Nate?
Yes.
Nate didn't say anything to me. He just came down and he approved the engineering plans on it, and then I'm getting approval to see if we can even build anything else inside that.
So you mentioned that, sometimes you'll have, I believe you said like 18-wheelers or something pull up so that they can load up this product and take it out. I think that's part of the reason there's a concern of why this is in a residential area, because I would assume that could be concerning to people that live in that area to have these big trucks coming in and out and taking away the product. And so I think that's part of the reason, like I say, that this particular thing is not approved in a residential area. How often do you have those trucks coming in and out of there?
It could be up to once a week, but they're usually not 10-wheelers. They're more like a pickup truck and trailer. We do have 10-wheelers drop off all the material when they come from Oregon. Let me think here. Can I answer your question? So how often? Once a week for pickup during the busy seasons, 8 months out of the year. Oh, the land. So you're telling, the land, the 5 acres behind the house, that's not, it's residential, as in, what does that imply?
That whole zone, the area that you're in is R1, which means it's residential 1 acre or larger. We don't have an agricultural zone in Hooper. We have what's called an agricultural protection overlay. But that's a little bit different. That's a protection people can file for to go over their land so that farmers are kind of protected from neighbors complaining about the noise and the smells and different things like that. But we don't have an actual agricultural zone in use in Hooper.
So I could build 5 homes on that land then?
Well, you'd have to come in and get it approved, but theoretically,
I could do that.
you could come in and apply to do something like that.
Lynette would have your hide.
Pardon?
I said Lynette would have your hide. You try to do that.
So I think an important point of discussion here is, like Tyler mentioned, is he's selling shrubs, flowers, wholesale to people. How is that different than the farmer that sells his hay and they come and pick it up at the same point? Like, I don't think we can get caught up in the weeds of saying, what are we going to allow him to do, but then we turn and let the farmer, because he's selling produce, do essentially pretty much the exact same thing all throughout Hooper. So I think in doing this is, to your point, the motion, Amanda, is if it applies, I think we just need to look at that, the state agriculture exemption, and see if it has the horticulture products actually in there, to see if that does apply to this zone or what he can do on that property. But as far as the motion today, I think we can go with what Brandon suggested and make that motion with those conditions. I guess I don't, it's a fine line of, well, is this, he's growing stuff out of the ground, but it's not stuff they eat, but.
I think that at least I think earlier we clarified that the agricultural protection that he filed for, or the exemption, had to do with the other parcel, not the one that it was one with the greenhouses on, right? So we're only looking at this one that he's asking to put in the.
But I think they considered those in conjunction. Did they, those two pieces of parcels in conjunction with that?
From what Tyler was explaining, I think that was only granted on the parcel that had the greenhouses on it. So now we're looking at the parcel that has the home and this other building. And the problem is that he's wanting to use this, he is using this as a wholesale business, and that's not currently allowed in that zone with Hooper City's codes. So I agree, I think what Brandon said is good, that, if we go ahead and we approve this, it's with the contingency that he's in compliance with any ordinances pertaining to that parcel. I think that covers us making sure that he's complying with the law.
Yeah, I think that covers you, and then it's really, the other piece that you're talking about is really a code enforcement issue. So if we have to send a code enforcement official out there to check on his property and make sure he's in compliance, let's let that person make that decision and not delve into that area. But I think if you make your condition clear that you're not waiving any kind of requirement, there'll be no ambiguity if the code enforcement goes there and gets confused that, wow, this conditional use permit somehow allows them to do it. Just make it clear you're not waiving any ordinance when you're doing that. Code enforcement can go over there, check it out. If he's not in compliance, he's not in compliance. So have to stop. If he is, he can do it.
Okay.
Any other discussion from staff? I'll entertain a motion for the conditional use permit for request for Tyler Larkin located at 6690 West, 5100 South, to add an additional bathroom and office space to the oversized structure.
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit request for Tyler Larkin located at 6690 West, 5100 South, to add a bathroom and office space within the oversized structure with the condition that he is in compliance with all city and state ordinances that would pertain to that parcel.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Prince, and we have a second from, we'll give it to Sheldon Greener. Commissioner Greener? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda would be a discussion of motion on the H.L. Parker Legacy Subdivision Developer Agreement Extension request located at approximately 5900 South and 5900 West. We'll turn some time over to staff for any presentation or information they have for us.
I just wanted to go over a brief timeline, just to provide context and where this development's at. It looks like the original agreement was executed on 4/15/2021. That had a 2-year development timeline with a 1-year extension. Chris has been good to come in and get his extensions. I could find the date specifically, but after his initial 3 years, he came in and got a 1-year extension before expiration of 2024. He was granted a 1-year extension. Well, he came in and got extended his additional 1 year to 2023, and then he came in for an additional extension to 2024, and he actually came in one final time to get extended to 2025 for a year. And so he has come in and done his extensions. He's set to expire 4/15/2025, and our current agreement is that he'll come to Planning Commission to get another extension if needed, and also also city council. The staff, after speaking with the developer and looking over the project some, it seems, and we can ask the developer as well, it seems like the project could be done and should be done quicker than a year. And so the goal would be to extend this for 6 months to October 15th, 2025 would be the staff's thoughts, but that's everything that we've looked through for this subdivision.
Thank you, Malcolm. Is there a representative from the H.L. Parker Legacy subdivision that could come forward at this time? Please state your name and if you're a resident of Hooper.
I'm Chris Ott. I'm the owner of Parker Legacy. I think, too, to just kind of catch everybody up on what's kind of happening is we were ready to pave last year, but because of tomato days, we got delayed to pave. And we did not know that Hooper's date is different than the plant's date. So Hooper's date is October 15th, and the plant shut off in November 15th. So we were ready to finish the street and everything in November. But Jared Hancock's, his thought was to wait till spring, which we didn't really want to do, but I guess we didn't have a choice because it was after October 15th. Everything else is done. The only thing we were waiting on was the gas line, which I believe is now going in right now, and then we just got to pour the sidewalk and we're done, other than just the street. He didn't want us to put any of the, you guys mentioned the drop off, he didn't want us to put anything in there because anything that goes in there now and gets wet would have to just come right back out and redone. So we're stuck, our hands are tied, and we can't do anything until after April 15th. So the only thing that's going to really be left is to pave the road. So.
Do you feel like a 6-month extension past that through October will give you enough time to do that?
Plenty. We want to pave it as soon as weather bearing, if it's a really rainy April, then we might push off a little bit. But as soon as we can get in there and do it, we'll do it. We're ready. I mean, we had the machine up there to do it, but so the one thing we did get done was all the patches, but he allowed that, but he wouldn't allow us to actually just pave the road. Well, I should mention one other thing, which maybe Malcolm can kind of fill in a little bit on this. He also mentioned about moving the crown of the road. And so he was thinking, that's why he wanted to wait till the spring, because we have extended the road quite a bit for the curb. In my opinion, I would leave the crown where it's at so people aren't doing this, as they're trying to go down that road. But I think at this point we were told just to pave our section, and then if you guys redo your road, that's a separate deal. But that was the mindset, is why do things twice. But
Yeah, I think, years ago when they put those roads in, they did it a little bit different. So now the newer developments, 6300 is another example of that, where it just kind of...
Well, and they kind of have a little more slope because it was ditches back then, but now that we've curved and gutter, it can still, the curb will handle it, but until you actually did the whole curb and gutter, I don't see why you'd want to change the crown on that.
Any other questions from the commission?
That is the only thing, right, that you're waiting on, is just paving that road?
Yeah, because I'm still current on my agreement now till April 15th, so we're still moving forward. We've got, like I said, the gas lines going in, and they were out there a couple weeks ago mapping it out. And as soon as that's done, then we can put our sidewalk in. Once that's in, it's done. We still have to wait to get inspections or the final sign off or whatever until the road's in. But we're actually in the process of escrowing 100% for the rest of the items anyways, just so we can move forward with house permits and stuff like that. But that's another situation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, now we'll open this up to a public hearing on the conditional use, or I guess there's no public hearing, sorry, my mistake on that. I'll now bring this back for discussion among the planning commission.
I don't see a reason why we shouldn't give them the extension for 6 months. That's what the staff's recommending, and they feel like they can be finished in that amount of time. I don't know what would be gained by not giving that extension. That's my thoughts.
I'll entertain a motion for extending the developer agreement for the 6 months as staff recommended.
I'll make a motion that we extend the development agreement for the H.L. Parker Legacy subdivision at 5900 South, 5900 West.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Severing and a second from Commissioner Wall. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Last item on our agenda, we have a discussion and motion on a decision of revoting for chair and vice chair at the next planning commission meeting. I'll open it up for discussion at this time.
The thoughts behind this was simply that the structure of the planning commission changed. We went from a 5-member to a 7-member commission, and the thought was that the new members have a vote and have a say. When we voted earlier in the year, it was known that we were going to move to a 7-member, but we voted anyway. So I think it would be best if we re-voted and just gave everybody a vote, everybody a say. Not that it has to be one person over another, and in my opinion, it just gives everybody a vote.
I disagree. The vote was taken, from what I read, the first meeting of the year for the new planning commission is when the vote takes place for a chair and a vice chair. That's what happened, and to redo it, to me, you'll have the opportunity, the new members will have the opportunity when they do it again at the beginning, the first meeting of next year. The alternating terms, you're always going to have somebody coming in, so you can change it every time a new member comes in because they haven't voted.
So, my thoughts, just a couple of things to clarify. Our code does specify that we will vote for a chair and a vice chair every year. It does not specifically say it will be the first meeting. That line is in the policies and procedures that we have been discussing, that we barely started looking at in December but have not decided on as a commission. I agree with Bryce in regard that, if we are supposed to function together as a commission, it's only fair that everybody has a say. Blake and Sheldon have served faithfully for a good amount of time. I think they have some valuable insights. I think that they deserve to be considered as chair and vice chair. I guess my concern is, why wouldn't we want to let them have a voice? Why wouldn't we want to involve them in that decision? We knew that was happening in January, and I think we tried to express our concerns with that. We were giving some information that wasn't necessarily how things were supposed to go or how they did go. And I think it's important that everybody has a say in this decision. Like I say, my thoughts would be, why wouldn't we want to give them an opportunity? They've served faithfully, and I think they deserve to be heard too.
What information was you given that wasn't correct?
That we would not be getting the new commission members, and that decision would not be made by the council until February, most likely March, and that was not the case. So.
And again, it wasn't that we got new planning commission members, it's that we got additional in addition to 5, now we're at 7. So it's not that we got new people in, like we will, like you said, with it being staggered, it's just that we got 2 more added to it, the structure changed.
And we will revote every year anyway. That vote every year takes place, that we revote for a chair and a vice chair.
So I've got a comment. I'd kind of like to know this position. What is the driving force? I mean, it's being pitched as cooperation, teamwork, all that kind of stuff. The first thought I'd have is, I think the vote came up for the year. We didn't know at the time whether it was the first meeting of the year or in March or whatever. And I think that's irrelevant. But in the spirit of cooperation, I think what could have been said was, Jace was, I don't think we did anything wrong when we voted him in, and I think it was done in a very
very hostile manner.
No, Sheldon, I would say in a very unhostile manner. And it feels like we're being bullied into doing this. And what could have been said was, congratulations on that position. We've been here for quite a while. How can we help? And so, I don't think, I'm still trying to get my arms around, we're making a pretty big issue out of this, and for why. It can't be purely because of cooperation. Is there some underlying thing that this position gives someone that maybe I don't know about?
I can try and address that. I mean, in regard to, welcoming and congratulating, I think that was definitely done when you guys came. I think that we welcomed you in. We said, hey, let's do a training. Let's sit down and answer your questions, help you guys get acclimated to something. I would agree that there was definitely some hostility for sure in that meeting, and anybody that questions that could go back and watch it. And I think that we expressed respectfully a desire to let these additional planning commissioners participate in that vote, which should have happened in our February meeting. And there was definitely some strong feelings that they did not want that to be done. That would be my biggest question. Why? Why would it have been so wrong to have waited for those people to participate? I think if you were in their shoes, you probably would have appreciated that. As far as what the chair's responsibilities are, they go far deeper than just running these meetings.
Sure.
So the new legislation that was passed, that just became effective this year, we now have a technical review committee that the chair of the planning commission is a member of. To me, it only makes sense that whoever serves in that capacity should have some experience under their belt, that they're familiar with our ordinances, they're familiar with Title 10, they're familiar with the general plan, they're familiar with all of those things that are going to go into making those decisions. If you were running a business and you were putting together who was going to be leading the body running that business, you would want somebody in there that understood the things that go into making those decisions. And I think if we're looking at what's in the best interest of Hooper, we need to have people in those positions that have some experience. I have absolutely nothing against any of the new people serving in those positions. But I think if we're doing what's in the best interest of the city, get a little bit of experience under your belt, and then maybe when we revote in January, if you're interested in being in one of those positions, I think everybody would feel a little bit more comfortable with that type of a situation. Like I say, it's a lot more than just leading this meeting. So those are my thoughts.
As far as, maybe city staff can speak to this, but as far as what is the planning commission chair portion of that technical review committee responsible for, and what decisions are they making at that meeting that would require them to have this experience?
It seems like the main portion is you guys need to be notified of every review that's taken place, because when you guys get a full completed application that's been reviewed and brought to you, it'll have to be approved within 20 days. And so I think the review cycles are a big piece, whether you wanted to come to any review to clarify anything, or when I think we've been sending you them as they come best we can, that we've done this review, this is where it was out of compliance. So I think that would be the main piece, is that when you saw items that like, oh, that's interesting that was out of compliance and they resolved it like this, just making sure that when it did come to the body that they were fully ready to vote on it and within 20 days to approve or deny it. That seems like the largest piece that comes to mind off the top of my head.
Does it say the planning commission chair or designate? I mean, does he have, what if he's out of town and out of the country for a month?
I don't recall, we can pull it up.
It does say that in there. It says the planning commission chair or their designee.
I guess what I'm getting at is if he doesn't feel comfortable going to a technical review, then ask one of us to go to it, you know what I mean?
Sounds like it's an option.
But why wouldn't we just put somebody in that position who does feel comfortable and understands how the process works and the ordinances and the things that need to be done to be in compliance? To me, that just makes more sense than to put somebody in that position that's going to have to ask somebody else to attend because they don't feel comfortable going.
So back to your point, Malcolm, how I review that is their responsibility is to gather information, make sure according to their understanding of city ordinances and everything, and then bring that information back to the council or the commission to help them understand, hey, this is what was presented in the technical review committee. As far as I understood it, it checked all the boxes. They didn't need any exceptions or things like that, and bring that information for the staff to be able to make, or the commission to be able to make decisions to the best of their knowledge.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be the largest part of the TRC involvement. Beyond maybe some time commitment, additionally, would probably be a consideration of, coming to some potentially if needed, things like that. There will be a little bit of expertise, like as we iron this process out, we'll need to, we've written some new ordinance and now we've had some applications come through, and there will be some discussion with the planning commission about, this was the letter of the law, but this is now the reality of this application. How do you want to handle this moving forward? We're gonna have to adapt a little bit, but that'd be the other piece that comes to mind.
That would be mostly them bringing that information and back to the commission, would it not?
I'm not sure if you guys would roll with that, but yeah, it seems like it.
I would think, just my point of view would be that there would be some kind of staff input anyway, right, from these initial meetings before it gets to this body. I think similar to what you do already, I would think there would be staff review anyway.
On the draft of the policies and procedures that we were given the first meeting we come in, that stated that it should take place, the voting for the chairman and vice chairman should take place at the first meeting. Who put those together?
Those were taken, Malcolm and I worked on that together, and those were taken from different cities, what they do in their planning commission bylaws or policies and procedures. That was barely introduced in December. I believe, I don't think Commissioner Greener was there for it because he came a little bit late to that meeting, so I think it was Blake and Bryce. We sat down and we went over that, and the idea was, we would try to look at it, see, those were suggestions that were brought in, but it's very much still in the works. Like, all of us need to look at that and decide how we want that to look for Hooper, because everything in there was taken from other cities and what they're doing, because we don't have anything in place like that, and we really should. It will help alleviate a lot of these issues.
So if we disagree that it shouldn't happen on the first, when the draft said it did, I would assume people agreed with that one, was put into draft. We could go back to and look at the minutes of review that meeting to see what was said there. But if it's not going to be the first, what's it going to be? What do you suggest that would it happen? Just whenever we decide somebody don't have enough experience, so we can't have them there? I don't know how do you get experience if you're not here?
Well, I completely see what you're saying, and I think going forward, once we decide what we feel like would be best, if we say it's going to be the first meeting in January, maybe we do it the first meeting in February, so that there's a little bit of time in case you have some new people coming in. I'm not sure what everybody else feels on that. I think the reason, like Bryce and Sheldon.
Well, either way.
What's that?
Either way, sorry to interrupt you. This is the first meeting of the year with all 7 members in attendance. So that whole first of the year thing, one doesn't apply. If it does, it applies to this now.
Only because some of you didn't come last month, so that wouldn't have been the first meeting. That would have been the first meeting, but it changed. What if the council changed it in 2 months and decided they want 9, or they only want 5? We're going to revote? Why is it liquid? I don't understand. Any other vote that we take, it's solid. We live with it. It has a term. And then now we're trying to say, no, we're not happy with the results, so we want to revote. We want to change it again.
I think it might be a little bit different if we had not said in that first meeting and known that we had 2 additional members that were going to be added. My question, and I hope maybe you'll answer this, is why wouldn't you have wanted these 2 men who have served to be able to have a voice in that vote? Why wouldn't you have wanted
The
that?
same reason if they didn't show up tonight and everything that was voted on, they didn't vote. They weren't there.
They hadn't been, They weren't there
Exactly,
because- no.
exactly.
The
They
council
weren't
had
there.
already approved it, and we knew that.
That's not true.
So here's, I guess I just read it and this is how I view it. Based on ordinance 10-5B-3-1, every year there's supposed to be an election. And I think that we wanted to have that election at the beginning of the meeting because life happens, just as we saw last council meeting, and some members were not able to make it. I'm not saying whatever, but you never know. So I think that happened, and then I guess my other statement is, I think that's why we took the vote. I mean, we didn't have a quorum last week, but that vote was taken with a quorum present, based even on the new rules of the Planning Commission. And then I guess my last comment is, I guess to Brandon, was there anything done illegally in that meeting with that vote taking place, or was that vote done in a manner that was legal and binding?
Yeah, so as far as that question, I mean, was the vote a legal vote? Yeah, it was. I mean, you took a vote, you had a quorum, there was a motion, there was a vote. Okay, so there's nothing illegal about the previous vote. My understanding is the city council had this on an agenda a week or two or whatever ago, and they ultimately landed on, let the planning commission decide, what you want to do with this particular issue. So now it's here for you to decide. But if the question is, was it an illegal vote or anything? No, it wasn't. It was a legal vote. You had a quorum, you had a vote.
But also, it's not an illegal vote for us to revote with our full commission of 7 members, correct?
It's not, because ultimately the city council had this issue before them, and they said let the planning commission make the decision on what they want to do. So you do have to consider, I mean, there are factors to consider. I mean, I think it's a well-taken point that, we want to just constantly be shifting in and out of new chair, position. And, what's the limit on that? Does this set some kind of a precedent, doing this? I mean, there are things to consider, but ultimately, is it illegal? No. The council wanted you guys to make that decision.
Yeah, and so I guess we're making a big fuss about who's chair, and I frankly don't really care. As far as everything that I read, yes, there's responsibility that the chair has, but his vote is one vote, and I guess I should say, their vote is one vote, and they have no other more authority or power than any other member of this commission. I think I agree with Brandon. I think it's a slippery slope that you can just go and say, what if something happens to me in my life that 5 months down the road that I'm not able to serve and I wasn't the chair? Are we just going to revote because we got a new member here? I think it just sets a precedent of saying, oh, let's just revote for the chair. I don't view the chair as having any more power than one member of this committee. They might have some more responsibility, but that responsibility, I feel, is, yes, understanding city code, understanding how the vision of the general plan works together with what people are coming in and proposing to do, but I don't view that as an insurmountable task to anyone on this commission, that they wouldn't be able to do that in that manner. So I guess my point lies in, we took a vote, there was 5 members, it had the quorum, it had a quorum present even with the additional members. We took that vote because we didn't know when those members were going to be present, and it so happened that the February meeting we didn't have a quorum present. So you can't say that that wasn't like a valid concern. And then I think my main point is just the precedent that it sets of, well, this comes across as perceived as we don't like who was voted in, so we're going to revote. I'm not saying that's the reason, but that could be the perception that is perceived here. And so those are my thoughts on it.
I would hope that you didn't feel that it has to do with not liking you personally, because that's not at all what it is. I hope I communicated clearly that I do think that it's important to have somebody in that position that has some experience and understanding. And I think as far as setting a precedent, we just changed to a 7-member commission, and that's something that's new. And I think think that, like, out of respect for the 2 members that we knew were coming, we should have held that off. And we could say the same thing as far as, well, maybe we didn't like them, or we were not happy with who they were gonna vote for as chair or something. I mean, we could speculate a lot of things. But I feel like the right thing to do would be to vote and have all 7 members have a say. And the outcome could be exactly what it was before. But the difference is we have 7 members of the commission, 2 who didn't get to have a say in that vote, and we knew that they were being added. We knew that in January, we did. And so,
We didn't know who those commission members were.
well, we didn't know who they were at the time. We knew they were supposed to be seasoned members. If you go back and listen to the city council meeting, that's what the decision was made for. That's why it was increased to 7 members. So
But seasoned
regardless,
members doesn't mean that it was gonna be, I mean, that's like you're saying that you knew exactly who was gonna be on the board. At any time, the city council could have chose other people.
it could have only been 3 because that was all the applications that they had. And so, and regardless, without getting off track, regardless of who it was, those people deserve to have a vote. And I'm still trying to understand why you wouldn't have wanted them to have a say in it. Why couldn't they have a
Because they weren't members, that's why.
I guess, it's not that, I think you're phrasing it that we didn't want them to have a say. I think we wanted to just have the vote to set our commission in order based off the ordinance that was read, that each vote, every year you take a planning commission, you vote for a commission chair and a commission vice chair. Not that I didn't want those people to have a vote, but I know that life happens and maybe we won't have a quorum in February like we did, or maybe it goes to March, or maybe it goes till April. And so I just think that based off the way the ordinance was written, it doesn't specify when, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it on the first meeting. It's not, I think that's not fair to phrase it in that manner of saying that I don't appreciate Commissioner Severing or Commissioner Greener's opinion, or whoever the other commissioner that it potentially could have been. I think that's unfair to
Well,
phrase
then why
it
not
that
let
way.
them have a say now? If it doesn't matter, then why can't we just let them have a
Because they weren't members of the commission at the time the vote was taken. It seems to me, for some reason, there's this huge division within the city, and everything is being changed, and you say everybody says they want that. Well, I don't know if you talk to everybody, people that I've talked to don't want that, so you're not talking to everybody. You said everybody wants it, wants us, the 7 to vote. I don't know where you get everybody. You can read it back. That's what you said.
I don't remember seeing. 'Cause
Okay,
I don't know who it
that's
was,
how
but
I
apologize if
took it. That's how I took it. That's what I heard. But they weren't here. All the members that were eligible to vote voted. Why does everything need to be changed because somebody's unhappy with the outcome? What we need is more public opinion, and maybe we need the media here to say, why are we changing the rules again in midstream? It's happened. Maybe the media needs to see this. Maybe the rest of Hooper City needs to see this and say, what is going on here? Why do we keep wanting to change the rules in the middle of the stream? The rules were set. We followed the rule. Everybody that was eligible to vote voted. They were chosen. There's another time. We have another next year. If somebody else wants to run, if you want to volunteer, you can do that. But it's not right now.
And I think we probably had a lot of debate on this, and we need to probably get to a point where we make a motion, but I stand by the fact that the rules didn't change. We knew that we were getting 2 additional members in January, and I feel like the decent thing to do would have been to wait a month and let them have a vote with us. And there's been several times throughout the years where, we lost a chair. Last year, I tried to explain this in January, we lost our chair in May of last year. We did not vote on a new chair and a vice chair until we had a new commissioner placed on the commission, and that happened in July. And then we voted as a full commission. And I just think that that's good practice. It's good to have all of the voices in this commission be able to express what they want. It would be different if we hadn't known, but we did know. We knew that those 2 members were going to be added.
I didn't know, so if you knew that, why didn't
Well,
you communicate that to us?
I did actually. If you go back and listen to the meeting, I did communicate that, and it was listen to the January 2nd City Council meeting and their work meeting, and you'll hear that that's what was decided and what was
But you
discussed.
said
So
Commissioner Severie and Commissioner Grenier was gonna be.
I never said that, and I said that we were getting two members.
Ask me why I don't want them to vote.
What I'm saying is, it just happens to be that it was Commissioner Severie and Commissioner Greener, whoever those two seasoned members were that were put back on, they deserved to have a say. That's all I'm saying.
If they miss next month's meeting, should they be able to vote on everything else we voted on?
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying,
don't
or
think
maybe
you're
I'm not
understanding.
communicating it right.
A yes
so.
or no would be suffice. Do you think that if you're not present, you should have the ability to vote?
I feel like the respectful thing to do would have been to wait until we had all the full commission, which we knew was going to be appointed, so.
Everybody that was eligible to vote, voted.
So my thought here is, we've got a lot of, the technical thing we've discussed, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, to give everybody the opportunity, but to me, this is being pitched as a, let's, you know, lock arms and sing kumbaya and get along and have a good commission. But it's, and in that spirit, we would do that. But I want to rewind to how this even happened. So when we were first sworn in and whatnot, Jace called me. He says, "Hey, I see on the agenda or whatever that document was that we need to vote for a new chair and vice chair." He says, "I'd like to do that. Would you nominate me?" I said, "Sure." So it really was done very much in innocence. There was no. I mean, it's not like I didn't appreciate. You know, I didn't want to oust you or anything like that. That was not the intent whatsoever. It was a simple request, because having the little bit of experience that we have now, the last few months or whatever, you're very efficient, and I'm sure you did a very good job at it. So my position is not against you in any way, but it's also in respect for one of the commission member. He wanted to do it. He said, and the other thing he says, I have lots of time to put to this. So in my mind, it made sense. That's why I did what I did. And then back to the experience thing. This is not Upper Manhattan, New York City. This is rural Hooper. And do I believe that Jace has the wherewithal and the ability to do this right out of the gate? Maybe not as efficient as someone else that's been seasoned, but I think that he can and has come up to speed. But again, if he stays in, what I think our best thing to do would be to rally around him and say, "How can I help you?" So that's just kind of where I said it's not so much on the technicalities of it is, but the spirit of it, the way it seems like right now is that we're kind of, we're gonna take our trucks and tractors out of the sandbox because we didn't get what we wanted. And I'm saying, no, let's get back in the sandbox and play together. So that's my thought.
Sheldon, do you have any comments? I think everybody here has had time to. Sheldon, if you want to say anything.
No, I'm ready for a motion.
Actually, one more thought is, if we're going to motion for this, should this be a unanimous vote? Or how does that, or is it going to be the normal way of motioning and seconding and that?
It only requires a majority vote. And it looks like it was put on the agenda that this is a decision on revoting for the chair and vice chair at the next planning commission meeting. So this would just be a vote, not for a chair, but that we're just going to revote on the chair at the next planning commission meeting. So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we revote on the chair and vice chair at the next planning commission meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Prince and a second from Commissioner Greener on revoting for the chair and vice chair at the next commission planning meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
Actually, I don't think it did pass.
I was a nay.
Sorry, I misheard that. Motion did not pass. At this time, I'll now open it up to citizen comment. You'll be limited to 3 minutes to express concerns of anything that has not been on the agenda meeting or on the agenda. Do we have any citizen comment?
Yeah, I'm John Gregg again. I live out here in Milford, and I put a pool in 2021, and in 2023, or 2022, a year later, my pool permit was not finished out, I guess. So we had to call somebody to come in and finish it up, or check it off, make sure everything was done. I called the guy, and he told me I just needed locks on my gates, which is, I just needed to put a padlock on. Okay, I just put a padlock on the gates. Called him back out. He came back out. But each time, I live next to my neighbor that has built this mansion, and it is like probably 6 feet from my fence. It's like like 6 inches. It's not feet. And so I kept asking this inspector that is, he works with you guys, is that right? I mean, is that really okay? And he's like, no, but I'll say something. I'll tell him. Well, then he came back out again, checked my locks, everything was fine. I was like, hey, I still never heard, it was a couple of months since when he came back out, but I was like, I've never heard anything. You said that you were gonna, and he's like, yeah, I told Hooper, and I called Hooper, and I still have a house that's next to me that has a big old thing, and it looks horrible. It actually looks horrible. But what can I do? What can I do? Because I don't think it's code, and I don't think he should have built that. And so, yeah, what? I mean, I pay taxes. What do I do? No. My house was built in 2007. This house was built in 2007. They built this extension on probably the last, they started it when I started my pool in 2021. So and it's probably about, my pool is about 40 feet long. His structure that's right next to my house, is probably at least 20 feet or more. Remember, I'm a garage, I don't know. And yeah.
So one thing to check would be the ordinance is the setback. What was there a setback, and was that appropriate?
It's right in the city. It's right next to the school.
It's probably more an issue for the office staff. If there's an issue of concern, they can maybe arrange to have someone go look at it.
And I've already called them, but I'll do it. Thank you.
If you have a minute right after the meeting and you'd like to come up, I can just get it all set for you right now to get it inspected and looked at.
Yeah, that's probably the best. I only said not to dismiss what you're saying, just this body doesn't really have the function of being able to do anything about that.
Do we have any other public comment?
There is a form online for code violations that you could fill out as well.
Awesome. I'll get that.
Thank you. There's no other public comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the planning commission meeting for March 13th.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Severing and a second from Commissioner Widdowson to adjourn the planning commission area March 13th, 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.